What if the person you trusted most, the one who had shaped your life, was hiding a dark secret that could destroy everything? Brooksville, a town where everyone knew each other by name, was rocked to its core when Mrs. Evelyn Clark, the beloved English teacher who had been the heart and soul of the community for over 20 years, was found dead in her classroom on a quiet October morning, leaving a town reeling, asking, who could do such a thing? Please kindly hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next chilling tales. The discovery sent shockwaves through the entire town. The janitor, Ralph, had arrived early to unlock the school doors, just like any other day. But as he entered Mrs. Clark's classroom, he froze. Her lifeless body lay sprawled on the floor. Blood had pooled beneath her head, her face frozen in an expression of shock, as if she had seen something terrifying before her life was taken. The door had been locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry, no indication of a struggle, and nothing appeared to be stolen. The room was eerily still. But it wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a random act of violence. Mrs. Clark had been murdered, and the question everyone was asking was, why? Detective Sarah Blake was called to investigate the murder. Sarah had solved many difficult cases, but something about this one didn't sit right with her. Everything about it was wrong. The crime scene felt too quiet, too calculated. The lack of obvious evidence left Sarah feeling like she was chasing shadows. There had to be a motive, but it was hard to pinpoint. As Sarah surveyed the classroom, she found nothing out of the ordinary at first. But when she opened Mrs. Clark's desk, she discovered something that would change the course of the investigation. A journal. It wasn't just any journal. It was Mrs. Clark's private thoughts, written over the past few years. Sarah began reading the entries one by one. At first, it seemed like the journal of an ordinary teacher, reflections on her students, her lessons, and her life. But as Sarah flipped through the pages, the tone began to change. They're watching me, every step, every move. I can't escape them. I've tried. I've done things I'm not proud of, and now I fear they'll come for me soon. The last entry was the most chilling. I don't know how much longer I can keep up the facade. They're close now, closer than I ever imagined. I'll never be free of them. Who was they? And what had Mrs. Clark done to make her feel so trapped? Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that Mrs. Clark had been hiding something dark, something she couldn't escape. But what was it? Sarah began to interview Mrs. Clark's students, hoping to find someone who could offer insight into her life. One name kept coming up: Noah Harris. He was a senior at the high school and had been Mrs. Clark's teaching assistant for the past year. He had always been a quiet, intelligent student, well-liked by his peers and respected by his teachers. But as Sarah spoke with his classmates, something didn't add up. They all spoke highly of him, but no one could explain why he had been so secretive in the days leading up to Mrs. Clark's death. Noah had been distant, almost paranoid, and no one had seen him interact with her in the days before her murder. When Sarah finally spoke to Noah, she was struck by his odd behavior. He was visibly shaken, but there was something unsettling about his grief. It seemed rehearsed, like he was playing a part. When Sarah asked him about the private conversations he'd had with Mrs. Clark, Noah's response was evasive, his eyes darting around the room. "We were just talking," he said, his voice cracking. "She was upset, yes, but it was nothing to worry about. She was a teacher, and sometimes teachers have problems they don't want to share." But Sarah didn't believe him. She pressed further, and Noah's responses became increasingly erratic. His discomfort was palpable, and Sarah began to wonder if Noah knew more than he was letting on. Was he involved in Mrs. Clark's death? Or was he just another pawn in a much larger game? Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. As Sarah dug deeper into Noah's background, she uncovered a shocking revelation. His father, a man named Gerald Harris, had been involved in organized crime. Gambling, money laundering, and shady dealings were all part of his life. But what was even more disturbing was the connection between Noah's family and Mrs. Clark's past. It turned out that Noah's father had used Mrs. Clark's past against her. Years ago, before Noah was born, Mrs. Clark had been involved in a hit-and-run accident. The victim was a young man named Ethan Lawson, a former student of hers. Mrs. Clark had been driving home late one night after an argument with her husband when she struck Ethan. Panicked, she fled the scene, leaving him to die. The guilt had eaten at her for years, but she had never told anyone about the accident until Noah's father found out. And when he did, he blackmailed Mrs. Clark, demanding money in exchange for his silence. Mrs. Clark had been forced to give him money year after year to keep the secret buried. But now, with Noah's father in deep debt to criminal organizations, the pressure had mounted. Noah, unknowingly entangled in his father's dangerous web, had learned about his father's blackmail of Mrs. Clark. And when Mrs. Clark started to talk about ending the payments, Noah was desperate to stop her. He didn't want to lose the only connection he had to the past, the only way to escape his father's shadow. Everything came to a head the night of Mrs. Clark's death. Mrs. Clark had made a decision. She was going to confront Noah's father once and for all. She had called him to the school, hoping to finally end the blackmail and put an end to the secrets that had haunted her for so long. But what Mrs. Clark didn't know was that Noah had been planning something of his own. He had come to the school that night to stop her. But it wasn't just to protect his father, it was to protect himself. The weight of his own guilt was crushing him, and he couldn't bear to see Mrs. Clark end things. He had been complicit in the blackmail, helping his father to control Mrs. Clark, and now he feared the consequences of her defiance. As Mrs. Clark and Noah's father argued in the hallway, Noah stood at the edge, hidden in the shadows. The confrontation grew heated, and before Noah could intervene, it escalated into violence. Mrs. Clark had fought back, but she was overpowered. Noah's father, driven by desperation, had done the unthinkable. He had taken Mrs. Clark's life, and Noah, unable to stop him, had stood by and watched. When the police finally pieced together the events of that night, the truth was revealed. Mrs. Clark's death was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of blackmail, manipulation, and guilt. Noah, driven by the desire to protect his father and his own secret, had been complicit in the murder. But in the end, it wasn't just the blackmail that had destroyed Mrs. Clark. It was the web of lies that had trapped everyone involved. But the most shocking twist came when Sarah discovered the true motive for the murder. It wasn't just about money or revenge. It was about something far more personal. Mrs. Clark had known all along that Noah's father was responsible for the hit-and-run accident, the very one that had shaped her life. And on the night of her death, she had been ready to expose him. As the truth came to light, Brooksville was left in ruins. The town that had once been filled with warmth and safety now felt cold and hollow. Mrs. Clark, a woman who had devoted her life to shaping young minds, had been betrayed by the very people she had trusted. The community would never be the same. Noah's father was arrested, but Noah, consumed by guilt and shame, disappeared. His whereabouts remain unknown, and his fate is left to speculation. For Sarah, the case was both a victory and a tragedy. The darkness that had taken hold of the town had been uncovered. But at what cost? The chilling reason behind Mrs. Clark's murder was not just about the people involved. It was a reflection of how far some would go to protect their secrets, and how easily a town's sense of safety can be shattered when the truth is buried too deep. As the investigation concluded, Sarah stood at the school entrance, looking out over the empty halls. The echoes of Mrs. Clark's lessons, her kindness, and her love for teaching lingered in the air. But the truth had been revealed, and in its wake, there was only silence. Brooksville would never forget the chilling reason behind the murder of their beloved teacher. The town would remember Mrs. Clark, not just for the life she gave to education, but for the secrets she had tried to keep buried, and the tragic end that had come as a result. In the end, Brooksville learned a hard truth. Some secrets, no matter how deeply buried, always find their way to the surface. Mrs. Clark's story, her legacy, and the chilling truth of her death would haunt the town for generations. And no matter how hard they tried to move on, the past would always be there, lingering in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. And with that, the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. But the question remained: how many more secrets, hidden in plain sight, would it take before the town was consumed entirely by the darkness it had tried so desperately to forget? The chilling reason behind the murder of a beloved teacher wasn't just a story of betrayal, guilt, and murder. It was a window into the dangers of keeping too many secrets. Secrets that, in the end, always demand to be heard. Never forget, hidden secrets, no matter how deeply buried, can destroy lives when they resurface, revealing the dark consequences of betrayal and guilt. And the people we trust the most may be hiding the deepest fears. And sometimes, the truth can be far more terrifying than we could ever imagine. Please kindly hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next chilling tales.